Why are ancient ruins underground? Have you ever wondered why we often find ancient buildings and ruins deep under the ground? In cities like Rome, Troy, or even Seattle, old streets, temples, and houses are sometimes 10 meters or more below where we walk today. Why did this happen? Where did these buildings go? And how did cities end up sitting on top of their own past? The answer is a mix of natural change, human action, and the long history of life in one place. Let's explore how history gets buried. In 1864, archaeologists started digging in the Roman Forum, one of the most important places in ancient Rome. What they found surprised them. Deep under the ground were streets, buildings, and temples that hadn't been seen for centuries. The city had grown over time. The street level had risen by more than 10 meters. This was not only true for Rome. Many cities across the world show the same thing. There are ruins underground that belong to earlier versions of the city. Why? Let's break it down. One big reason is destruction. In ancient times, cities often suffered from fires, floods, or earthquakes. When a fire destroyed a neighborhood, people needed to rebuild quickly. But instead of clearing all the broken walls and cleaning the ground perfectly, people just flattened the ruins and built on top. It saved time and effort. This happened many times in Rome. For example, after the Great Fire of Rome in the 1st century, many buildings were damaged. Instead of removing all the rubble, builders covered it with rock and earth and created a flat surface. New buildings were placed on top of the old ones. Over the years, these steps were repeated again and again. Each time, the city got a little taller. The new buildings stood on higher ground. The old ones got buried. When new buildings were built higher, streets also had to rise to connect with the doorways. So roads were covered with more rocks and dirt. This made the street level higher. And when cities were in valleys, the effect was even stronger. Valleys filled with layers of ruins and new materials. An amazing example is the Basilica of San Clemente in Rome. Today's basilica was built in the 12th century. But underneath it, archaeologists found another church from the 4th century. And under that, there was a temple. And under that an old Roman house. In total, there are at least 4 layers. The valley where the basilica stands is now 18 meters higher than it was in the 1st century. This is not just a Roman story. In the Middle East, many cities were built over older cities. These became large hills over time. These are called tells, like in Tel Aviv. A tell is an artificial hill made from centuries of human life and rebuilding. The ancient city of Troy is a great example. Around 3000 BC, people built a small village there. The houses were made of mud bricks. When the buildings were destroyed or damaged, the materials broke down and covered the old ruins. Then, a new group of people came and built on top. This happened many times. In fact, archaeologists have found 9 or 10 layers of Troy, each one a different version of the city. Civilizations came and went: Persians, Greeks, Romans, and others. In the end, the city was lost under a hill until it was rediscovered in the 1800s. You might think this only happens in ancient places. But it also happens in young cities like Seattle in the United States. In 1889, a big fire destroyed much of the city. The streets already had problems with flooding, so city leaders saw a chance to fix things. They decided to raise the city's streets. They built high stone walls on both sides of the road and then placed new roads on top. For a while, buildings were 2 stories below the new streets. People had to use ladders to enter shops. Eventually, sidewalks were added at the new street level. The old city, now underground, was forgotten for a time. Today, there is still an entire network of tunnels and buildings under Seattle. It's a modern example of a city built on top of itself. Sometimes cities go underground not because people build on top, but because the ground sinks. This is called subsidence. One modern example is Shanghai, China. The ground under the city is soft. Over the years, people pumped out groundwater for drinking. But this caused the ground to compress. Now, Shanghai sinks about 1 centimeter every year. Since the early 1900s, it has sunk nearly 3 meters. With rising sea levels and heavy buildings, this is a serious problem. Cities like Shanghai are working hard to manage this issue, but if a city sinks too much, new layers may need to be built on top to stay above water. When archaeologists dig in old cities, they often find surprises. People didn't always write down what they built or what stood before. Over time, as people built over old ruins, they forgot what was beneath them. This happened in Rome's Basilica of San Clemente. For hundreds of years, people visited the church and had no idea that another older church was hidden below. When an archaeologist began digging in the 1800s, he found a staircase leading down to the past. There was a 4th century Christian church, and beneath that, a temple of the Mithraic religion. Mitra was a mysterious god worshipped by a Roman cult. In the dark rooms, paintings and shrines were still there, untouched for centuries. In many places, nature plays a role in hiding old cities. Wind, rain, and floods can bring dust, sand, or mud. Over time, this covers buildings, especially if the city is no longer in use. Think of cities near rivers. If a river floods and leaves behind layers of mud, those layers can bury entire neighborhoods. If people don't come back, nature slowly hides the place completely. When future generations return, they might walk over the ruins without even knowing it. Tells are some of the clearest examples of how time leaves layers. Each civilization leaves behind houses, pottery, tools, and roads. When these break down, they turn into soil and mix with natural dirt. Over centuries, the layers add up. One layer might be only 1 meter thick, but with 10 civilizations, that's 10 meters of history. Archaeologists carefully dig layer by layer to understand the order of time. Every piece of pottery, every wall, even ashes from fires all help to tell the story of what happened in that place. Sometimes, buildings were built on top of each other for religious or political reasons. In many cultures, temples or churches were placed over old sacred sites. This showed power or the change of religion. In Rome, Christians built churches over old Roman temples to show that their religion had replaced the older one. This is why San Clemente has a Christian church above a pagan temple. This was common in many parts of the world. The idea was the new religion is more powerful, so its temple will stand higher than the old one. So why are ancient ruins underground? Because people don't like to waste space. They build on top of what's there. And over time, this creates layers. Add to this natural disasters, soil changes, religious decisions, and nature's work, and you get cities that are full of hidden history. Every time archaeologists dig, they're not just looking for gold or treasure. They are uncovering the steps of time. One building on top of another. One life over another. It's like reading a book, but the pages are made of stone and earth. If you ever visit Rome or Troy, or walk the streets of Seattle, remember this. The ground under your feet might be holding secrets from 1,000 years ago. Maybe even more. History is not just in books. It's under our feet.